Welcome back to Lit by Lily. Today, I'll be bringing you my version of fish and chips. Now for the classic fish and chips recipe, cod is usually the fish that is used. However, I'm going to be using tilapia today because that's what I had in the freezer. I'll be using half a cup of flour, half a cup of cornmeal, a tablespoon of Old Bay, a tablespoon of garlic, a tablespoon of onion powder, a tablespoon of black pepper, and a tablespoon of parsley. I will be using a little bit of kosher salt on my potatoes. It's not pictured, but I will be using it. I'll also be using a fourth a cup of buttermilk, 1 egg, and I will also be using vegetable oil to fry. Yes, I know all about tilapia. No, it's not my number one preference. However, I gotta have some lunch, right? Now, normally I cut potatoes over the trash can, but for video and recording purposes, I'm doing on the cutting board. But just know that I wash and sanitize everything, and I hope you do the same before and after each use. I'm going to be cutting this potato into thin slices. It's not going to be potato chip style, but some pieces may be smaller than others. I'm not doing all the pieces the same size, but none of the pieces are going to be thicker than about 1/3 of an inch. You will see me flipping this potato different types of directions. You'll see my hand turning in several different directions. I am left-handed and I'm trying to make sure I give you all a good view of what I'm doing. After I finished cutting the potatoes, I gave them another rinse. Then I began to season them. I used kosher salt, black pepper, paprika, parsley, and garlic. And the combination of these seasonings on a potato, oh my goodness, you're gonna love it. It's not doing too much and it's not doing too little. It's just enough. Now, normally I use a little bit more uniformity when it comes to seasoning my fish. However, on this day, I was so casual with it. First, I began to slice my fillets in half. After that, I washed my hands and I added my cornmeal into my flour. Then I began to add half of the seasonings that I listed into my flour mixture. Then I added the other half to my fish. To get a real good seasoning onto your fish, you want to rub the fish down. You want to marry the seasoning into the fish. I suggest wearing gloves. However, I was preparing this for myself. But if you are preparing food for others, please, 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 please wear gloves. Now, after I wash my hands, I began to prepare my mixtures. First, I'm going to be preparing the buttermilk and egg mixture. I will be cracking 1 egg over into the buttermilk and spinning it with a fork. I will be dipping each fillet in the buttermilk and egg mixture. I'll be covering both sides. Then I'll be dipping it into the flour and cornmeal mixture and laying it nicely on a pan. Repeat this step to every piece until all your pieces are covered. After my fry oil reached 350 degrees, I began to drop my potato chips over into the fry oil. I will be using the same oil for fish, so I did the potato chips first to keep the chips from tasting like fish. I fried them for about 4 minutes, flipping them over on each side occasionally. The thinner pieces got a nice golden crispy brown look to them, while the thicker pieces stayed pretty light. I'll be removing them from the fry oil and adding them to a piece of parchment paper so they can have the grease drain off of them. During this process, my fish was in the refrigerator getting, well acquainted with its batter. You want to make sure that the fish is covered in plastic wrap while it's sitting in the refrigerator on chill, waiting to jump over into the grease. While the chips are sitting to the side cooling off, I will be adding my fish to the grease one by one. As you can see, you should do it lightly, because if you don't, you're going to have a few splashes like me. Here, you will see me frying the fish. At this point, I think I'm about 5 minutes in. I like my fish crispy, so I'm waiting for it to get golden brown. To do this, you want it to get at about 7 minutes in. If you're unsure whether or not your fish is done, I suggest using a kitchen thermometer like always. Fish should be at 145 degrees for 15 seconds internally. Make sure you take that thermometer and go through the center of the fish to get the correct temperature. Now let's have a moment of silence for the beautiful tilapia that just came out of the grease. I must say the crispiness of this fish was absolutely amazing, and I enjoyed my lunch that day. However, I will say it was too much food for one meal, so I ended up finishing the rest later on that day for dinner. I hope you try this recipe at home, and I hope you like it. And thank you so much for taking the time to watch.